Hey everybody, let's continue our series about voice types in the 2013 season by taking a look at the tenor. There are three major tenor roles coming up in 2013: Tonio in Donizetti's The Daughter of the Regiment, Samson in Saint-Saëns's Samson and Delilah, and Radames in Aida. This covers the history of the development of the tenor as a voice type during the 19th century, beginning with Daughter in 1840, through Aida in 1871, and finally Samson in 1877. The role of Tonio in Daughter is rather typical of the Italian lyric tenor roles that we find in operas like The Elixir of Love, Don Pasquale, even though the opera was written for the French audience. But only 34 years later, we've got Samson, a tenor role for the French grand opera stage, and we're in a whole different world. By the time Samson premiered, the opera orchestra had gotten larger, the sounds of the individual instruments bigger and thicker, thanks to the many improvements in the production process. So singers' voices had to be bigger, brighter, and able to carry over the sometimes formidable wall of sound produced by the larger orchestra in the pit. This is as true of Samson and Delilah as it is with any of Wagner's operas. Samson uses a big orchestra, and in casting the roles for this opera, you have to be really careful about matching the voice to the demands of the score. But let's start with Tonio, the romantic male lead in The Daughter of the Regiment by Gaetano Donizetti. This is a fairly standard lyric tenor Italian role, despite the fact, again, that it was written in French and for a French audience. The role is considered something of a specialty today because of the 9 high C's in his aria, Ah mes amis. But the role was written only a couple of years after the famous tenor Gilbert Dupré became the first tenor to take high C's from his chest, which, coming from today's tenors, is such a thrill. So you have to ask the question whether the first tenor singing those 9 high C's at the Opéra Comique in 1840 did that or not. My guess would be probably not. It was most likely produced by what the French called voix mixte, or a mix of chest and head voice, or perhaps it was even sung in falsetto. That would be unacceptable today. Our audiences wouldn't stand for it, and we'd consider it a kind of wimpy sound. But if you're following these podcasts, you've heard that aria a number of times. I'd like to have you listen to Tonio's aria from Act 2, which is a typical bel canto aria for tenor. Lyrical, with that beautiful arched Italian line, all about celebrating the voice and its qualities. That means that the orchestra takes a back seat to the voice, providing only the most basic accompaniment. This is an aria from Daughter that you don't often hear. Let's listen to Tonio plead with the Marquise of Berkenfeld in a last-ditch effort to get her to agree to allow him to marry Marie in the aria Pour me rapprocher de Marie, sung here by Luciano Pavarotti. We'll just listen to the first verse. that's the Donizetti that we all know and love, and it really stands out in this opera filled with military music and waltz rhythms. Chronologically, the tenor role of Radames in Verdi's Aida came next in 1871, and it could not be more different from the role of Tonio. By this point, the orchestra had gotten much bigger, and Verdi was inspired by the French grand opera style of composition, which included the elements of large choruses and a corps de ballet. And he'd already written some roles for tenor that moved into heavy dramatic territory, like Manrico in Il Trovatore, Alvaro in La Forza del Destino. The term isn't used much today, but these were considered a tenor voice type called the tenore robusto, or robust tenor, whose sound was more baritonal, dark, but ringing, a voice that carried considerably more weight in it than the typical lyric tenor. Today we'd call him an Italian dramatic tenor. Radames, the Egyptian general, is just such a role with very heavy demands. In terms of intense drama in the music that shows off the power that Radames must project, it comes in the third act, when he realizes that Aida's father has been overhearing his conversation with her, and that he's revealed some state military secrets. This ends up being a wonderful trio with Aida, Radames, and Amonasro, her father, and it has all the dynamism and electricity that one comes to expect of Verdi's later scores. Here are Leontine Price as Aida, John Vickers as Radames, and Robert Merrill as Amonasro. Just a few years later, at the Court Opera House in Weimar, Germany, Camille Saint-Saëns's opera Samson and Delilah premiered with a singer in the tenor role who'd specialized in the big operas of Verdi and Wagner. His name was Franz Ferenczi. He was a favorite of Meyerbeer, but he also sang Siegmund in Wagner's Die Walküre, Tannhäuser, and Lohengrin. So the tradition of giving the role of Samson to a heroic, dramatic tenor voice, and in the case of Ferenczi, a Helden tenor, was there right in the beginning. Many of the most successful Samsons over the years were also successful Radames, Otellos, Siegfrieds, and Tristans. It's interesting to note, though, that the first Samson in Paris, which was a good deal of time after the premiere of Samson at Weimar, was also a successful nadir in Bizet's The Pearl Fishers, a role that we now give over more often to strictly lyric tenors. But consider Enrico Caruso's last week at the Met when he sang the tenor roles in Samson, The Elixir of Love, and La Juive. Three very different tenor roles that we would cast with three completely different tenors today, and all in 1 week. Amazing. Here's a bit of Samson's third act scene. He's been captured by the Philistines and imprisoned where he's bound to a giant millstone. The orchestra describes his exhausted, monotonous steps as he moves the millstone slowly, and while doing so, he prays to God for help in his desperate situation. Here is an excerpt from Vois ma misère hélas, with tenor José Cura. The tenors who will be doing the honors for us this season are Stephen Costello as Tonio, Clifton Forbes as Samson, and Walter Fraccaro as Radames. Let's take a look at each of them for just a moment. Stephen Costello was previously with us in 2 Gounod operas, Romeo and Juliet and Faust. He's been making a lot of news lately with debuts at the Glyndebourne Festival, Covent Garden, the Salzburg Festival, and the Metropolitan Opera. And he's looking forward to a debut at the Vienna State Opera in the role of Romeo. He also sang the role of Greenhorn in the world premiere of Jake Heggie's Moby Dick at Dallas Opera. Clifton Forbes was last with us in this same role, Samson, a role that he's sung all over the world to great success. Tristan, Otello, Don José, Parsifal, and Florestan are among the many demanding roles that he sings at companies like the Met, Canadian Opera, the Paris Opera, and the Vienna State Opera. Finally, Walter Fraccaro, our Radames, is making his company debut in the role. He sings regularly with all of the most important companies in the world, including La Scala, the Bayerische Oper in Munich, the Teatro Real in Madrid, San Francisco Opera, and the Teatro San Carlo in Naples. His roles include all of the big Puccini roles like Cavaradossi and Calaf, as well as all the major dramatic Verdi roles like Don Alvaro, Manrico, and Don Carlo. So that's it. We've got some great singing to look forward to this season, and I know you're looking forward to it as much as I am. I'm Nick Reveles, and I'll see you at the opera.
Thank you.